Oh, here we go. We are live. Hey, welcome everybody to this episode of Sports Business Insider. I am Denzel Snipes. This is Sean Rushy, the sports agent himself. And if you are watching us on one social media channel, just understand that we are open on pretty much all of them. We're on Facebook, YouTube, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. We're also on DBTV and Stream TV as well. Sideline Sport One is our social media channels, and also SidelineSports.net is our website. So feel free to go to our website and check that out as well. Um, Tomorrow night, the Gauntlet, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is with, well, I actually won't be on this week, but J.J. Jenkins, Don Rubius, and James Tatum will be on. Occasionally, Ken from Ken's Pet Show, Ken Whitley is going to be on there as well. I don't know if he'll be on there tomorrow night, but occasionally he does pop on. So, yeah, just tune into all of our great shows on the Sideline Sports Network. So, before we get started, how you doing, Sean?
Everything's going good, man. How you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good, pretty good. So the baseball season is officially over with the Dodgers winning the World Series last week, and MLB free agency should be in full swing coming up shortly. I know one of the big names entering free agency is Astros third baseman Alex Bregman, but there are many, many across the league. But of course, we are a show about the business aspect about sports. So, what we're going to go into is how exactly this thing works out whenever a player signs to a new team, what the old team might get, etc. But we're going to start off here with what is known as a qualifying offer. Sean, if you would like to educate them on that.
Yeah. So as you stated, MLB free agency is probably one of the oldest for the four professional sports going back almost 50 years now, and they've come up with this system. It's a lot different than say bird rights or the NFL that's got restricted free agency. They've got this qualifying offer system, but it's really to a select group of players. So, for instance, Jack Flaherty was up for a qualifying offer this year until the Tigers traded him to the Dodgers, which eliminated him from the chance of getting a qualifying offer from the Dodgers because you have to stay with the same team that were on opening day or be on the roster somehow on the last day of the season. We know some crazy things have happened where guys get traded, cut, return to the team type of thing. But you have to be on the same roster you were on opening day. So, Jack Flaherty got eliminated from a qualifying offer. And now, honestly, anybody who got traded at the trade deadline got eliminated from a qualifying offer this year. So that's one thing, that I think, no one really looks at when these guys get traded is, one, why did they sign so quickly, or why was an extension part of the deal? Because they basically got their qualifying offer year taken away from them because of the trade.
Okay, no, absolutely. And see,
Go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I was going to say, so the way they figure out the money in terms of what the qualifying offer would be is similar to how NFL does their franchise tag. It's an average.
Mhm.
They take the 125 MLB contracts for that given year, and they take the average of that. This year it checks in at 21.05. Last year it was 20.3. So just kind of like the minimum salary increase that goes up kind of a little bit year after year. So next year will probably be 21.5, 21.8, and so on and so forth.
Okay. And then also, let's see, qualifying offer compensation, and also breaks down what exactly is a round one or a type A free agency or a round B type B. So basically players who are ranked in the top 20% of their group, they're designated type A free agents. Those placed between 21 and 40 are designated as type B. If you want to give them a little bit more insight on what type A and type B is.
Yes. So this is how they used to classify players and for qualifying offers from 2002 really to about 2016. There's a little gray area in there from 2013, 14, and 15 as they were kind of negotiating what to do because it just seemed the compensation and the system, the calculations on how they reached who was type A versus type B wasn't necessarily the best. And then, of course, they added in competitive balance tax. So they had to go back and look at this. So this is the system they had in place, starting in 2002 to about 2016. Type A free agents were in the top 20%, and Type B free agents would be in the top 40% at their specific position. And what they did is they broke those down into groups. So catchers were one group. Obviously, catcher stats are much differently. You can understand why they're a group to themselves. Another group was DHs, first basemen, and outfielders. So that that makes sense as DHs are usually power guys, first baseman usually power guys. Probably about 60% of outfielders are power guys. So you're looking at similar statistics. Second, third base, and shortstops is your next group. So you got your infield there, and then you have one group for starting pitchers and one group for relievers, obviously because the usage is much different. So they were trying to be fair, position by position group, how we determine who's top 20, who's an A free agent, who's a B free agent. So back then, when a team lost an A free agent, the they would receive the signing club's first round pick. Unless that club picked in the first 15 picks, then they would receive the second round pick. In both scenarios, though, the team losing the free agent also got a secondary pick for the next year in the first round, usually towards the end of that round. Type B free agents, the top 40% guys would get the team a competitive balance round pick, which usually takes place between rounds 2 and 3. Now that competitive balance still exists, but now those picks are more just assigned picks versus them being lost from these free agents, and we'll see why as the changes in 2016 take place.
Okay, and now we'll go into basically compensation for losing players. So teams can receive compensation for losing a player. If the team that loses a player went over the CBT threshold, the comp pick will be placed after the fourth round has been completed. Now, the value of that player's contract doesn't matter in this case. Then you also got revenue sharing recipients. So if that team that loses the player is a revenue sharing recipient based on its revenues and market size, then the selection, if and only the lost player signs for at least $50 million, we awarded a pick between the first round and competitive balance round A. More on that, Sean?
Yeah, so this is where the new rules kicked in because they changed how teams pay luxury tax. They changed how teams that are in smaller markets like Tampa and Oakland can dip into this revenue sharing pot in terms of needing some money from time to time. So, like you said, a competitive balance taxpayer actually gets penalized, right? They don't get the first round pick because you're already over. You've obviously got a lot of superstars on your team. You're in the tax threshold. So, like if the Dodgers lost a superstar this year, they're not getting a first round pick for him. They would get a fourth if they put a qualifying offer on anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that makes sense because why would you reward the Dodgers with a first round pick for already having a stacked roster? It'd be the same thing with the Yankees and a lot of the major market teams that have really gone over and above the luxury tax. The Mets fall into that as well. The Red Sox. It's about a half a dozen teams that would fall into that. Where it would not make sense for MLB to try to keep their parity by giving these teams first round picks that are already over the threshold. The revenue sharing recipients, as you mentioned, and these are, like I said, these are teams like Tampa and Oakland. So these teams don't typically sign a guy to a $50 million contract, right? So a lot of it means they could sign a guy and the team losing him is not going to get anything. But in the situation where they do spend the money, instead of getting their first rounder, they get the pick, between the first and competitive balance round A, which is another supplemental little round they have. So it's not as good as a first rounder, but it's not that first round gem that you could possibly really find, an 8 to 10 year guy in that round. And obviously 8 to 10 year guys come out of other rounds, but the first round of baseball, the way they've been using these guys now, they've been hitting the field quicker. It's almost giving these teams an unfair advantage by saying, hey, you lost a player from a major market and here, we'll just replace them for you.
Yeah.
All other teams that don't fall into either of those categories, if they were to lose a player, their commissary pick will come in competitive round B, kind of similar to the older system where they get the latest of all the picks. And again, that's kind of like round 4, and it's not so bad. It's still a decent player, but it's not going to replace who you lost for that year. And so now this is the caveat, and this is why some of the older players have been sitting out that reached that top 20%. Dallas Keuchel, Craig Kimbrell. People thought maybe they were sitting out because the offers weren't good. We heard rumors about Kimbrell turning, really looking for a long-term deal and turning down, short-term offers. But the real thing is these teams did not have to give away a draft pick for signing these guys after the draft had already happened. And because baseball does their draft in June and July,
Yep.
They just wait. Once that's over, the draft pick compensation goes away. I don't know if they'll ever start looking at that, if it starts happening more and more as a loophole these teams are using to get away from losing draft picks. But it could be something that if it becomes a longer list of players, and I know there's a little bit of players that did that this year. I believe JD Martinez was one of them.
Hmm.
If that continues to be the case, I could see MLB putting in a secondary rule for guys who specifically sign after the draft.
Okay. Hmm. Okay. Okay. And so, with that being said, now we move on. Last but not least, to penalties. Penalties for those who for signing players who reject a qualifying offer. So, competitive balance taxpayers. So, a team that exceeded the CBT threshold in the preceding season will lose its second and fifth highest selections in the following year's draft, as well as $1 million from its international bonus pool for the upcoming signing period. If a team signs multiple qualifying offer free agents, if such team signs multiple qualifying offer free agents, they will forfeit its third and sixth highest picks as well. Sean, a little more about that?
Yeah, and I'll have to dig into it. I'm pretty sure the Angels had given Otani a qualifying offer, but in this situation, when he goes to the Dodgers are one of these teams over the CBT tax. They're in that group of CBT taxpayers, so they're going to lose multiple picks. Plus, like you said, $1 million from the international pool, which for a team that's getting Otani, they're going to sneeze at the $1 million in the bonus pool. Um, if and then again if and now if they signed a second free agent, as you mentioned, now you also forfeit another two picks, so you could forfeit as much as four picks in the early, say, 5 to 6 rounds, just to sign two qualifying offer free agents. But I think that's why you see baseball stay with its parity and its competitive balance, is because they figured out, well, unlike football where compensatory picks become like the third, fourth, fifth round, which are kind of dart throws. The third round's a little more solid, but you get past that third round, they're kind of dart throws. Baseball's, not. I don't want to say they're awarding you, but they're at least compensating you for losing a top player by saying, here's a pick at least in the top 60. You're going to have a chance to replace him over the next couple of years.
Of course.
Um, and I think it's the only way that they can, keep guys like Tampa and Oakland and other teams that consistently lose the big free agents, competitive, by giving these early supplemental picks versus giving them a pick in the 10th round, which is probably not going to move the needle for the guy they lost.
Oh, okay. Not bad at all. I mean, let's see. So teams, they can actually start signing free agents 5 days after the World Series. So we're about at that time period. So
Yeah,
they can start looking at signing them. They can become free agents after six qualifying seasons, and a player can only receive a qualifying offer if they're on the same team that they started on opening day. And last but not least, let's get into some of these 2024, or mention the 2024 qualifying offers. Go ahead, Sean.
yeah. So obviously, I think the most obvious one, Juan Soto got his. There is rumors he already has a meeting set up with the Mets tomorrow. Kyle Hendricks, just as you mentioned, free agency open. Kyle Hendricks was the first free agency to sign. I believe he signed with the Reds for one year, $2.5 million. Christian Walker is on this qualified offer list. Max Fried of the Braves, Corbin Burns of the Orioles, Anthony Santander of the Orioles, Nick Pivetta of the Red Sox, Martinez of the Reds, Bregman, as you mentioned at the top of the hour, Tescar Hernandez of the Dodgers, Willie Adams of the Brewers, and then you've got three Mets: Alonso, Mania, and Cervino, all on the list. The thought is the Mets will probably lose one of those three guys, especially if they're able to sign Soto. Um, my guess is they'll even be willing to lose both of the pitchers if they could keep Alonso and Soto. Now, you don't get a penalty for keeping your own free agent as a qualifying offer, but the Mets will, obviously surrender two picks for Simon Soto. And they are also in the competitive balance tax. So if the Mets were to go off anybody else on this list, the Mets will be looking at losing four picks next year. So I think the Mets are going to be heavily involved from both sides, because you've got three on the list, one guy on the list that's heavily rumored to go there. I think they'll be looking at compensation coming their way, and they'll also be getting some back when they lose Menina and Cervino.
All right. Well, and there you have it. There's the business side of MLB free agency, at least the short version of it. Thursday Night Football is on right now. We typically go for about a 15-20 minute show. We're about at the 15-minute mark. But thank you all for tuning in. And we will all see you next week for more sports business insider. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button if you are checking us out on YouTube, and also hit the notification bell for more shows. Gauntlet tomorrow night. I'm the sniper. This is the sports agent himself. We will see you all next week.